Hello world and welcome back to Money Makes Games. Today we are going to be saying goodbye to our friend here, and to end the series off I thought I'd just give you a quick overview of how everything works and to show you how to tune the walk cycle and figure out what's going on when the spider does something weird. Ready to do this? Then come with me. My name is Mani and I make games. Okay, so what do we mean by weird behavior? Well, let me give you some demonstrations. Let's try walking our spider off the edge of this vertical object. Now, as you can see, all of a sudden our spider has all its legs up in the air. Well, most of them anyway. Why is this happening? Well, let's have a look. If you remember, we have our foot placement targets, which are responsible for determining the ideal foot position in relation to the body, as well as detecting the closest terrain point to that position. Then we also have our foot targets, which are supposed to move from the placement position to that position. In other words, we need them to move so that the skeleton can move, or the IK can do its job. That still doesn't answer our question. Why are my feet up in the air? Well, if we look at foot placement targets specifically, let me just switch a little something on here. I'm going to switch on gizmos and I'll switch on this tool. This is Cast Visualizer. I'll link it down in the description so you can pick it up for free from the asset store. It helps you visualize ray casts and sphere casts, box casts, and capsule casts. It's quite useful for troubleshooting in some situations. Now let's move here quickly. If you look at this, let's see if I can pause that in time. There we go. If you look at this cast, for instance, this is one of our foot placement positions, trying to cast to get a hit, but because it's not getting a hit, the foot ends up in the default position, which is up here. I know it's difficult to see with all this casting going on, but I'll take it off in a moment so that we can continue. Now, how do we fix this? Well, if you remember from my code previously, I actually did a normal ray cast. I decided to switch that to a sphere cast in order for me to be able to handle cases where I get close to the edge but might want to put my foot over here. How would that help me? Well, if you think about it, if I cast a big enough sphere from here, it's going to go down, and eventually, because it gets big enough, the sphere will still hit this edge, even if the foot placement position is not right above the edge. So let's try that quickly. Let's take our foot placement targets. Let's unpause this. Now we're going to make our spheres a little bigger and try to take a step again so that our feet will move. Let's go to 2.5, and immediately you're going to see a problem here, because right now almost all our feet are in the air. Why is that? Well, if you look at the Unity manual for a sphere cast, you'll notice that if the sphere at its origin, or the sphere cast at its origin, is already intersecting with a surface, it will not register a hit. And if it doesn't register a hit, we go to our default behavior by putting our foot at the cast position. So how do we fix this? Well, that's why we have a cast height over here. Let's just do one small step so we can see that again. Come on, there we go. Again, all our feet are in the air. Now, if I go over here and I push my cast height, look at what happens to the origin of the cast, and look what happens as the cast progresses downwards. Now, as you can see here, the cast position moved up, and now as the cast comes down, it hits the surface and our spider finds its footing. And we can go slightly over and our spider will still find a place for its feet. Now there are limits to this, because obviously the bigger the sphere, the more chance of hitting something that you might not want to hit, like say a foot position that's actually over here. Then your spider would put its leg under itself, although spheres are pretty resistant to that because they are, well, smaller at the bottom. Still, something to keep in mind. Also, when you have your cast height, if you end up going down between two hills and one of your hills is over here, you might get a cast on the wrong side of that surface, a hit on the wrong side, or if it's thin enough on the other side, which will have your feet reaching up above your head instead of actually touching the ground beneath you. Okay, that's it for our sphere casts. I actually like it this way, so let's leave it like that. And just see what it's like when our spider crosses that. I like that. We'll stick to that. So that's a cast height of 3 and a sphere cast size of 2.57. I'll show you the code at the end. Let's just go to our foot targets quickly and look at something else that needs to get tuned. Now, as you can remember, on the foot targets you get the step size, which is basically just defines how far from you the ideal foot placement target should be before you decide to lift up your foot and create a new step. Now, if you take this and you make it really big, let's just move over. Now, making it bigger makes your spider look very menacing, but you might notice a little drag there. Let's make it more pronounced. This, of course, is because the distance required before you take a step is much larger, and therefore the feet tend to try and keep reaching the static targets. Or how should I put this? The IK targets stay where the previous foot placement was until that step size threshold has been crossed. If you turn it down, we'll get to that now, you get a walk that's maybe a little more comical and less menacing, so you can play with it. But if you turn it down too far, you start to get this. Now, can you guess why this is happening? Okay, I'll tell you why this is happening. Our foot placement targets are slightly below the terrain. So now, even though I reach my intended target that the raycast has determined for me, the intended target is still further from the foot placement target than the actual step size, and therefore you start to get this. So if you are tuning your spider and the walk's looking good, but on uneven terrain you still get a bit of dancing, just push that step size up a little bit. The next thing for us would be your foot speed. Now I'm going to turn the foot speed down. Whoa, not that much. Now, as I go backwards, my IK targets can't really keep up with the movement of the body. It might look very cool and menacing, but that means we'd have to bring the body speed of our spider way, way down. If we make the foot speed too high, it almost looks like the feet are teleporting into position or moving very unnaturally fast. So it's always good to find a good middle ground there. For me, that middle ground's around 30. Lift height kind of speaks for itself. So if we go extreme, we can make our spider do the boogie. If we go negative, we're going to shuffle, because the knee position will always be underground and we won't be able to go there. So let's keep to a positive value, and the distance tolerance we've spoken of before. That's basically just how close you should be to your intended target to consider yourself to be there. If you make that 0, you're never going to reach that target and your steps will just basically freeze. Well, that's about it for the tuning. From here on out, tuning's all yours and you can build your spider and play with it. Make it look as menacing or as slow as you want, or as fast and sketchy as you'd like. And to round this off, I'm just going to show you some changes that I made to the body movement script. And then I'll leave it in your hands. Before we go on though, if you like what I do, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, maybe ring the bell to get notified when I bring out new videos. Okay, let's get to the script. Okay, here's our new body movement script. Now, you might remember that the previous body movement of my spider was based on physics. So I had colliders and I would basically push that collider across the ground while freezing its rotation and manually taking over the rotation using forces. But yeah, that was prone to falling over sometimes and couldn't really scale vertical surfaces. So I've decided to make everything kinematic, and to show you how it works, this is the script. Okay, here are the serialized variables. You can check everything out. I'll hold it there for a moment, and then I'll explain what they do as I go through the code. Now, in the start, we're just grabbing the rigid body so that we have it for later use. And then here in update, we're calling orient body. We also have the public on move input function, which, as in the previous one, just grabs the input and assigns that to our current input variable, which we use in different places. Now here is orient body. What orient body is supposed to do is basically to determine the rotation of the body and to move the spider in the correct direction as per our inputs. Let's see how that works. First, we have a boolean called grounded. Now, grounded's going to be true if we are on the ground. If it's not true, that means that we are supposed to be falling, in which case we will call apply gravity. Now, to figure out if we're on the ground and what the orientation of the ground is, we declare a raycast hit and call the function get orientation up, which is over here. over here in raycast hit, we want to return the hit that we get. First we get vector 3, which is our cast offset, and we calculate that by taking the transform.up multiplied by our cast height above body plus the transform.forward multiplied by the current input.y multiplied by our forward speed and time.delta time. Now, why do we do this? The first part's easy. This gets us a point above the body at the cast height, which is what we want. But why did I do this? Well, I want to figure out in my current direction how far the spider is going to move forward given the y input, the forward speed, and the time.delta time. So basically I want to end up with an offset point that is not only above the body at the cast height, but also in front at the distance that I will be moving. So I'm trying to predict where I'll move. Then I do a sphere cast down from that specific point, and I add the, I take the transform.position and I add the cast offset so that it casts from that specific point. I specify the radius of my sphere cast. I cast it opposite the transform.up direction, in other words down, and I output the result to hit over here. And then I basically just take the cast height above body plus the ground cast depth to specify how far we should cast that sphere. And then finally, we're just ignoring all hits except those on the terrain layer, as always. And I return this. Now that we get back to orient body, we've got a point on the ground at a distance in front of us, which is the projected distance we would travel. Now we check. If hit has a collider, that means there was a hit and the collider is not null. We act on that. If not, it means we are probably in the air and we should start falling. So we apply gravity. Now, if we did get that hit, we'll go forward point, which is the point that I've declared up here. That's a vector 3. I've cached it. Forward point is going to be the hit point plus the ground normal multiplied by the clearance height that I've specified. That's one of those variables up there that you've seen as well. So what this does is it takes that point that I've determined and it elevates it above the ground by the amount of ground clearance that I've specified for my spider. Now I have a point in space in front of me for the distance I'm supposed to travel and at the correct height above the ground. Then I do the old transform.position thing. I take the transform.position and I change it using vector3.move forward from our current transform.position to that forward point, and I've specified the movement at forward speed. Now I've only used forward speed so that I know that it's always bigger than forward speed times time.delta time. Otherwise, if I used an arbitrary value like 1, and for some other reason my forward speed actually has me traveling further than that in one frame, I would just travel 1, which is not really what we want. But you could have made that 10 million and it would not make a difference. Then I do the rotation. So we grab our quaternion desired rotation, which we declare here, and we set a look rotation as our desired rotation. Now, as you know, the look rotation basically wants a forward and an upward vector, and it calculates the rest of the rotation from there. To get the up vector, we're going to set our up to be the same as the ground normal, or the normal from our hit, because we want the spider's body to be parallel to the ground. But We also want to match its rotation around the y-axis to what we told it. So if we turned our spider, we don't want the spider's body to suddenly be facing back uphill in exactly the same direction as the normals forward. So we take our right, our transform.right, and our head.normal, and we get the cross product for that. Be careful here because the sequence matters here. If you switch these two, you're going to get a vector for the rear facing orientation of your spider. So take the transform.right and the normal first. The head's normal. Then finally, when we've got that desired rotation, we just take transform rotation and we start rotating towards that. We take our normal rotation, desired rotation, which is what we're rotating towards, and we specify the turn speed using turn speed multiplied by time dot delta time. And then again, like I said, if we didn't get a hit, we just apply gravity so we can fall. And doing that's pretty easy. It's called down here, transform.position plus equals physics.gravity multiplied by time.delta time multiplied by the rigid body's mass. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Now we have a spider controller that actually moves the body. We can set how high off the ground it moves, and we can stick to the ground so that we don't fall off vertical surfaces, or if we have to round a sharp corner, fall off that. I'll do a quick demo, and then as I do that, I'll also say goodbye. Let's run that. You can see here where we set our desired ground clearance. I think lower is a little better in this case. And we'll find some really harsh terrain. I'll pause it here so you don't have to watch me walk. Okay, on our harsh terrain, you can see the spider pretty comfortably handles almost anything you throw at it. You can turn around, and with my camera set up, we can follow the spider. That's it for me. If you'd like to know how to make a nice follow camera for something like this, check out the video, which I'll link at the top right. And like I said before, if you like what I do, why don't you hit that like and subscribe button. Until we see each other again, my name is Mani, and I make games.